If you worked in the 1970s, you're going to recognize every single thing on this list. These aren't just objects or memories, they're proof you were there, proof you lived it. 30 things that every worker from that era knew by heart. Let's see how many you remember. 1. The metal lunch pail. That metal lunch pail wasn't just a container, it was practically part of your uniform. Dented, scratched, your name may be written on the bottom in permanent marker. Your wife packed it every morning before you left for work. Sandwich, maybe some fruit, something wrapped in wax paper. That lunch pail went everywhere with you. Set it down by your station, carried it to the break room. It got hot in summer, cold in winter, and it smelled like years of sandwiches and metal. 2. The glass-lined thermos. Inside that lunch pail was your thermos, glass-lined, which meant if you dropped it wrong, the glass would shatter inside, and that thermos was done. But if you took care of it, that thermos kept your coffee hot from 6 in the morning until noon. Real coffee your wife made that morning. Not fancy, just coffee. Black, probably. Maybe with sugar, if that was your thing. That thermos was as essential as your boots. 3. The punch card and time clock. You clocked in and you clocked out. That time clock didn't lie. You stuck your card in the slot, pulled the lever, heard that solid chunk sound as it stamped the time. That card tracked every minute you worked. Every minute you got paid for. You kept track of your hours because the company sure did, and at the end of the week, those punched cards determined your paycheck, for the pay envelope with cash. Friday afternoon, the payroll clerk came around with envelopes. Your name on the front, cash inside. Real bills you could count right there in your hands. 20s, 10s, 5s, 1s. You knew exactly what you made because you could see it, feel it, count it. That envelope went home with you, and you handed it to your wife, and she managed the household money. Simple, direct, physical. 5. Your union card. If you worked union, you carried that card. Small piece of paper or cardboard with your name and number, that card meant something. It meant you had representation. It meant you had brothers who'd walk off the job with you if things went wrong. That card meant you weren't alone. You were part of something bigger than yourself. 6. Leather work gloves. Those gloves molded to your hands over time. Leather, heavy, stained with oil and dirt and sweat. The palms wore thin in the spots where you gripped things most. You probably went through a few pairs over the years, but you tried to make them last because good gloves weren't cheap. They protected your hands, saved your fingers. Every scar on those gloves was a scar that didn't end up on your skin. 7. The break room. The break room was sacred. Small room with a table, maybe some chairs. A coffee maker that was always on. A clock on the wall that everyone watched, counting down the minutes until break was over. That room smelled like coffee and cigarettes and whatever everybody brought for lunch. It was loud, guys talking, laughing, complaining about the foreman. But it was yours. Your 15 minutes to be human instead of just a worker. 8. Smoking everywhere. People smoked everywhere. At their stations, in the break room, walking across the parking lot, nobody thought twice about it. Cigarettes were cheap. Everybody had a pack in their pocket. The break room had ashtrays overflowing by the end of the shift. The air was thick with smoke. That's just how it was. Nobody complained because everybody did it. 9. Coffee from the percolator. That break room coffee came from a big percolator that sat on the counter brewing all day. Strong, bitter, probably burned by noon. But you drank it anyway because it was hot and it was coffee and it kept you going. Nobody made fancy drinks. No lattes, no cappuccinos, just coffee. Maybe some powdered creamer if you were lucky. 10. The foreman. Every workplace had a foreman. Everyone knew by name. He wasn't your friend. He was management. He kept the line moving, made sure quotas got met, wrote you up if you screwed up. But he'd also been a worker once. He knew the job, knew what it took, and if you did your work and didn't cause problems, he mostly left you alone. 11. The company nurse. Bigger plants had a company nurse, small office near the front, first aid supplies. If you got hurt, cut your hand, twisted your ankle, got something in your eye, you went to see the nurse. She'd patch you up if it was minor, send you to the hospital if it was serious. She'd seen it all. Nothing shocked her. She knew every injury that could happen in that plant because she'd treated most of them. 12. The shift whistle. That whistle, or horn, marked time. Start of shift. Break time. Lunch. End of shift. You heard it across the entire plant. loud enough to cut through the machine noise. When that whistle blew at the end of the day, you stopped what you were doing, cleaned up your station, and headed for the door. That sound meant freedom. 13. Your locker. You had a locker with your name on it. Small metal locker where you kept your street clothes, maybe an extra shirt, your lunch pail when you weren't using it. That locker was yours, your spot, your little piece of personal space in a workplace that didn't give you much. You decorated it maybe? Pictures of your family, a calendar, whatever made it feel like it belonged to you. 14. Work boots that lasted years. Good work boots cost money, so you made them last. Leather, steel toe, heavy, you oiled them. Replaced the laces. Resoled them if you could. Those boots molded to your feet. They were uncomfortable for the first few weeks, and then they became part of you. You could tell a man by his boots how long he'd been working, what kind of work he did, how much pride he took in his gear. 15 handwritten time cards. Before everything was computerized, time cards were handwritten. You wrote your name, your hours, your department. The payroll clerk checked them against the punch clock. Mistakes happened. Hours got missed. And if your card was wrong, you had to sort it out on Monday morning before you got paid. It was manual. It was slower, but it worked. 16. The water fountain. Every plant had water fountains. Metal. The water was always either too warm or too cold. You'd lean down, press the button, drink until you'd had enough. No bottles, no cups. Just you and the fountain. You drank from the same fountain as everybody else. That's how it was. 17. Everything cost a quarter or maybe 50 cents. You'd dig change out of your pocket during break, buy a Coke and a candy bar if you wanted something extra. The machines were old. Sometimes they ate your money. Sometimes you had to hit them on the side to get your candy bar to drop. But they were there, and they worked most of the time. 18. The company parking lot. That parking lot filled up every morning before shift. Rows and rows of cars. American cars mostly. Big sedans, trucks, station wagons. You knew where you parked. Same spot every day probably. You knew the cars around you. You knew who was late if their spot was empty. That parking lot was where the workday started and ended. 19. Carpooling. Gas wasn't cheap even in the 70s, so people carpooled. You'd ride with the same guys every day. Pick them up, drop them off, split the cost of gas. You knew their routines, their families, their problems. You spent an hour a day in the car with these guys. They became your friends whether you wanted them to or not. 20. The suggestion box. Every workplace had a suggestion box. The company wanted you to think they cared about your ideas, so they put up a box, and you could write down suggestions and drop them in. Most people didn't bother. The ones who did usually never heard anything back, but the box was there. A symbol of something that was supposed to be participation, but mostly wasn't. 21. Safety posters. There were safety posters on the walls, simple, cartoonish sometimes. Watch your fingers, safety first. They'd been up so long they were faded and curled at the edges. Nobody really looked at them anymore, but they were there, reminding you that the company cared about safety at least enough to hang a poster. 22. Tool checkout system. If you needed tools for your job, you checked them out, signed your name, took the tools, brought them back at the end of shift. The tool room guy kept track. If something went missing, he knew who had it last. It was a system built on trust and accountability. You took care of the tools because other people needed them too. 23. Basic first aid kit. Every department had a first aid kit, metal box with a red cross on it. Inside, bandages, gauze, antiseptic, maybe some aspirin, nothing fancy. If you got a small cut or scrape, you patched yourself up and got back to work. The first aid kit was for minor stuff. Anything serious, you went to the company nurse or the hospital. 24. Most plants didn't have air conditioning. In summer, it got brutal. Hot, humid, sweat pouring down. There were fans, big industrial fans that moved the air around but didn't really cool anything. You worked through it, drank water, took your breaks, complained about the heat, but showed up the next day anyway. 25. Portable radio. If your supervisor allowed it, you might have a portable radio at your station. AM radio. Made the work a little less monotonous. Not everywhere allowed it, but if you could have one, you did. 26. Newspaper at lunch. Guys brought newspapers to read during lunch, sat in the break room, ate their sandwich, read the sports section or the news. You talked about what was in the paper, what was happening in the world, what the government was doing. The newspaper connected you to something beyond the four walls of the plant. 27. Payday Friday rituals. Fridays were different when payday came. Everybody was a little lighter, a little happier. Some guys would make plans to stop at the bar after shift. Others went straight home to hand over the envelope. But there was a feeling on payday Fridays that you didn't get any other day of the week. You'd made it through another week, you'd earned your money. The weekend was coming. 28. The retirement gold watch. When a guy retired after 40 years, they gave him a gold watch. Company policy, a ceremony in the break room or the office. Handshakes, a little speech. The watch came in a box. You wore it once or twice and then put it in a drawer, but it meant something. It meant you'd given your working life to that company, and they acknowledged it, even if it was just with a watch. 29. 40 years at the same job? It wasn't unusual to work 40 years at the same place. You started young, you worked your way up, maybe. You stayed because the job was stable, the pay was decent, and you had a family to support. Loyalty went both ways. The company kept you on. You kept showing up. 40 years, one job. That was a life. 30. A pension you could count on when you retired. You got a pension, not a 401k that depended on the stock market. A pension, fixed income, every month for the rest of your life. You knew what you'd get. You could plan. You could retire with dignity. That pension was the promise. Work hard for 40 years, and we'll take care of you when you're done. And for the most part, they kept that promise. Those are 30 things that every worker from the 1970s remembers, not because they were special or fancy, but because they were part of the daily reality of working life. They were the objects and rituals and systems that defined what it meant to go to work and earn a living. If you recognized most of these things, you were there. You lived it. You remember what work was like before everything changed. Before computers, before automation, before direct deposit and 401 kiloseconds and modern safety regulations. You remember when work was simple. Hard, but simple. The metal lunch pail, the thermos, the punch card, the cash envelope, the union card, the break room, the foreman, the locker, the boots, the pension. These weren't just things, they were proof that you showed up every day and did your job and took care of your family the best way you knew how. And if you're too young to remember, now you know what it was like. Now you understand what your father or grandfather experienced every single day for 40 years. That was work. That was life. That was what built the middle class and kept families fed and gave people dignity. Those days are gone, but the people who lived them remember. And as long as they remember, those 30 things will never be completely forgotten.